Hello. Welcome to today's Culminating Experience presentations. My name is Alexandra Zapata, the Program Assistant of the Berklee Global Jazz Institute. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and thank some of the leaders that supported our students' success throughout this academic year. Thank you to our deans from the Professional Performance Division, Dean Sean Skeet, Associate Dean Karen Bell. Thank you to our Dean from the Graduate Studies Division, Dean Sindhu Revaluri. We would also like to thank our directors from the Berklee Global Jazz Institute, founder and artistic director Danilo Perez, and managing director Marco Piñataro. Thank you to our associate director Mary McClory, department coordinator of academic affairs Ruben McFarlane, and the graduate studies team for setting up this event. Today we have Aditi Malhotra. Aditi Malhotra is an Indian vocalist, composer, and educator currently based in Boston. She studied performance and jazz composition for her undergraduate studies at Berklee College of Music and was the recipient of the 2021 Herb Alpert Young Jazz Composer Award. Aditi has performed internationally at venues such as the Kennedy Center, Panama Jazz Festival, and NCPA Mumbai, among others. Aditi has two committee members, Dean of the Graduate Studies Division, Sindhu Revaluri, and Professor Alan Mallet. Aditi's advisor is Professor Chase Morin. Please welcome to the stage, Aditi Malhotra.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. For my culminating experience project, I chose to undertake a personal journey in connecting my roots in Hindustani classical music to my experience exploring Black American music and chamber music instrumentation here in the United States. My goal was to find a unique artistic voice that acknowledges these two traditions in a sincere and organic way. As a female musician who grew up in India and moved to the States, I sometimes struggled to find an honest way of expressing myself within the jazz tradition. At the same time, it was difficult for me to even acknowledge my Hindustani classical roots. Because it is such a deep tradition, I felt as if I had abandoned it and chosen a different path. This journey through this year has been about getting over that fear and doubt and reclaiming something that is a part of my identity. Each piece that I'm presenting today is its own exploration of a particular concept from my background and training that I wanted to integrate with new ideas of improvisation and harmony that we have learned at the Institute, and with the emotions attached to ideas of home, identity, and longing. My first piece is titled Anarti, which is the name of the house that I was born in, and Arti also means prayer. I wanted to explore this duality of pray and play, the playfulness of childhood interwoven with lyrics that explore ideas of devotion, faith, and prayer that are present in the Hindustani classical tradition and that were present for me growing up. The introduction uses imagery of childhood through the flute emulating a child running. My intention was to explore chromaticism over a B-flat drone, which is the key of the drone that I grew up singing over, played on instruments like the harmonium, as you see here, and tanpura, a four-stringed instrument tuned to the root and fifth, which I emulate through the cello and bass patterns. A flicker's enough to incite the fear that I fold in the palms of my hands, joined and released. Faith, or is it folly? Trusting the sleeping body, hands and limbs and choreography. Seek, or will it find me? The why will ask itself. The way will write its own beginning in words that rise above meaning. The why will ask itself. The way will write its own beginning in words that rise above meaning. The answers are too close. The answers are too close to see. Thank you. My next piece is titled Sprout. For this piece, I began with the lyrics that explore themes of being an immigrant in this country, finding your roots, being away from home, and overcoming fear. As the title implies, I was thinking about how important it is for all of us to find the right environment we need to grow and thrive, just like a plant needs the right air, earth, water, and sun. The musical concept that I explored in the first half is the North Indian rhythmic concept of the high, which is a rhythmic phrase that is repeated 3 times and leads to the one. This creates a tension and release and functions like a rhythmic cadence. I also experimented with changing the harmonies to depict the emotion of the lyrics. Wild seed of light, will you sprout in the dark? Oh, in the dark. And will you take a chance? And will you take a chance in unfamiliar land? Ooh, da-da-da-da-da. And will you take a chance in unfamiliar have been deeply empowered by the women that I have known and come to love through my sisterhoods and friendships, and female musicians from both these traditions that I grew up listening to and emulating to learn. I was particularly inspired by a multimedia project created by Indian classical musician and scholar Vidya Shah, titled Women on Record, which is a project investigating the lives and music of female recording artists. They were the first recording artists, as mentioned. I was simultaneously inspired by Angela Davis's research on blues women in the early 1900s in the United States. And it was exciting for me to find connections between these musicians from two different parts of the world. As I read more about their lives as working class musicians who were not confined to the domestic sphere, I was also struck by the similarity of timbre, range, color of their voices. They were both exploring through their music themes of pain, longing, love, and lament in a very vulnerable way, and at the same time, singing with a kind of projection, authority, and conviction that embodied strength. This piece was inspired by my relationship with their voices and their stories. The first half explores these ideas of longing and lament, and the second half is an experiment where I wrote a blues in 7/8 with the 3+4 subdivision, as is common in classical, semi-classical, and popular music in India. last piece is titled Homes, which is a poem, Home, by Arundhati Subramaniam, an Indian feminist and post-colonial poet. The words of this poem spoke to me as I resonated with how it explored ideas of alienation and belonging that come with the different homes we inhabit. For this piece, I wanted to use the pitches from Rag Bhairav, which is a rag I grew up singing. The pitches are written here. And experiment with the harmonies from it, and also use a different sa or root for the verses of the song to experience something very familiar in a different way. Give me a home that isn't mine, where I can slip in and out of rooms without a trace, never worrying about the plumbing, color of the curtains, cacophony of books by the bedside. A home that I can wear lightly, where the rooms aren't clogged with yesterday's conversations, where the self doesn't bloat to fill in the crevices. A home that I wear. A home like this body, so alien when I try to belong, so hospitable when I decide I'm just visiting. Thank you. For my future plans, I would like to continue exploring these ideas and research through musical collaborations, expand my research pool on female musicians in both these traditions to continue finding connections and amplifying their voices. Most importantly, I hope this project can inspire and empower younger musicians to acknowledge the multitude and depth of their different cultural influences in music and understand the importance of this process, as was revealed to me this year. I would like to thank the directors of the Berklee Global Jazz Institute, Danilo Perez and Marco Pignataro, my advisor, Chase Morin, my committee members, Alan Malay and Dr. Sindhu Revelry, Vidya Shah, Aman Majan, and Ujjwal Nagar for their conversations, wisdom, generosity, and time. My musicians, Keral, Sara, Ria, Arturo, Rafa, Roella, Yuval, and Upasak. My mentors at Berklee and Global, Jerson for the record and mix, and Daniel, and my family in India and Boston. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. And now we're going to start the second part of your presentation with a question and answer from the panelists and the faculty. And we're going to start with Dr. Revoluri as part of your panel.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful and wonderful to hear you talking about it in your own voice. We shared some back and forth about some things I would love to talk to you about, but that's not what I'm going to ask about now. I have two questions that I would love for you to reflect on with us. One of them is about the idea of audience, not really who's listening, but if a new set of musicians were to take up these pieces, what would you want them to be thinking about and having in mind? And then a sort of thread of that is very specifically about timbre. And for you as a vocalist, beautiful instrument, by the way, I think these are traditions that require something quite different from singers in terms of production and quality. And you do a really lovely job as a performer navigating that. But not everybody can do that. And so I'm curious for you to talk a little bit. You did talk about it in Cummings Road, about timbre in particular, but sort of what you're thinking about as a composer and as a performer, and then what you would want sort of other performers to be thinking about.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Great questions. For your first question, I wanted to double check. Did you mean like when I bring these pieces to play with a different group of people, or are you referring specifically to more an educational part of it when would be interacting with younger or like other vocalists who would be attempting this timbre? Is that?
I guess it's a little bit of both, but I'm imagining that these pieces may live on separate from you in a way, right? You won't always be the performer on them, or this won't be always the group performing them. So what would you kind of want to send out in addition to the score and a recording? Like, what would you want them to be thinking about and knowing?
Yeah. So actually, like for my graduate recital, it was nice to play this music with a different group of people because they were the ones who were interested and available at that time. And I think firstly, they knew me, so I think that always helps, the personal connection that you have, the relationships that you have with the people you're playing with. They know where I'm coming from. And I think each of these pieces is a very personal story for me. And I shared as much as I could. So I just feel like when somebody relates to you personally and they relate to your story, and they see what you're doing, and they love you in some ways, they can, they can try to feel what you're feeling when you wrote this music, or the intention that you have to perform when you're performing this music too. So I think that's for like future collaborators and things. And for other vocalists who would be, as an educator perhaps, if I understood your question correctly, I would just go back to like the recordings that I was listening to and share those with them. Like the female musicians that I mean, they were on my slides, but I didn't get to name them. But I was listening a lot this year to like Begum Akhtar, Iqbal Bano, and then also like, I mean, Billie Holiday always, and then like reading Angela Davis's book, just like checking out some of her transcriptions of like the Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey recordings. I think like you have to get into the details of the way that those musicians sang and emoted and what they were singing about and why they were singing. So that's something that I can inspire, but I don't think I can impose that on anyone, and they would, have to find their own journey with that. So I hope that can happen.
Thank you. That was great. As a vocalist yourself, what have you found to be easy or challenging in navigating these traditions that do require kind of like a different concept sometimes of, breath or where the sound is coming from and that kind of thing. And it can be tricky to move between them in a single piece or to develop something that's kind of like a third way that is sort of organic to them. I'm just curious if you could reflect as a performer about that.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think it was kind of like finding that third way, like you were saying, because I think initially it felt very different. I remember with Chase we had a few less like meetings where we were noticing how singing in a different language totally changes the way that you sound. So I don't necessarily think I'm singing the same way in every language. It's bound to be different, but singing without words is something that helps, I didn't sing in Hindi at all here. I wrote the blues using Indian solfege though, so I wrote sa ga ma pa pa da ga pa. So like I think that like influenced the way that I thought about that melody, but I didn't I chose to sing it without solfege when I was playing it with the musicians because I wanted to try something new. So I think definitely like experimenting like without words helps, and in like, yeah, I think it just takes like years and the slow like long notes, the meditative practice of transcription to just internalize the different traditions, I think, which I'm still doing. So,
Thank you, Professor Mallet.
Thank you, Aditi. I'm still writing. I don't have any questions, actually, because I've asked so many questions of you this semester already, and I want to put you on the spot. So I want to do two things. I know that your parents are here, and so I want to give you, first of all, due praise. As a 61-year-old man who's been around for 61 years, but as a musician who's been around for, yes, thank you, Marco, who's not particularly bright either, apparently. As a 61-year-old man, it seems to me like everything is getting louder as I approach the twilight years of my life. And your music is so beautiful in a gentle way. We use this phrase "quiet power," and it's. I wrote down something that I think pertains to that. This beauty that's not fighting to shine. There's plenty of room for everybody to shine, both in the compositions and in the interpretation, both in the execution and the arrangements, so they're not competing with one another, and I love that about your music. And what else did I write? So praise for that. Praise for the journey that you took on, because you're an accomplished musician, you're a consummate musician, vocalist, and still you took the personal responsibility to change some of those things. And change is really difficult because change goes through unlearning, especially the more you know, the more you have to unlearn, and that's a lot harder than learning. And because of that, I really want to praise you for trusting me, thank you rather for trusting me, but not trusting me blindly. Our classes were always a lot of back and forth, and some you went with and some you resisted, and I love that because there is nothing more boring than somebody who worships everything that you say, because I'm wrong most of the time. But I do love your ability to listen and take in and interpret what is being said to you and use it to the best of your ability at this moment. You've actually taught me certain things. You don't know that because we don't talk about that, but there are certain things that indeed you have taught me, and I've gone and done some research because of certain things that you've told me. And the last thing that I'm going to say is this: there's a show on TV called Fool Us. It's two fantastic magicians, sorry, not musicians, magicians, called Penn and Teller, and they put on a show of that invites less famous magicians, and the goal of the magicians is to actually see if they can fool Penn and Teller. So when they're not fooled, they talk back to the guy or the woman and say things in code. Most of the time, we don't understand what they're talking about, but the people on stage actually does. So I'm going to finish, and I apologize to everybody else, but I'm going to speak a little bit in code to you for the very last bit of this. And so I'm going to say, and just going to remind you that, first of all, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And secondly, knowledge is freedom. Freedom is power. And from power comes independence. And I just hope you never forget that. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Professor Mallet. Professor Chase Morin.
Hi, Aditi. Wow, it's been a journey. It's really been just like an honor and a privilege, and I've learned a lot, not just this year, but multiple years, because also you were in the undergrad, and to see how you've developed over the years, your music already so strong, but also finding more and more identity in it as you go. It's been just a beautiful experience to witness and to see. I love the blues. I really, really love the blues. And I think the last two songs in particular, those elements, I think there's so much more to explore there. And I think in general, I'm so excited to see what you do with this music, because this is kind of like your first step. And, it was kind of funny. I think we were a little telepathic. I wrote the exact same comment that you were saying. She asked you about how other musicians might interpret your music. And one of the things I wrote was, I was like, I encourage you to let others try your music, and like taking a step back, because that's one way. There's a lot of other ways too, of trying to now kind of sit back and to try to really understand the meaning of the music and what's the essence of what you've created. Because I know what it's like to be a composer and to be recording and to be performing and to be in it, and there's so much going on, and you've been making changes and revisions, all this kind of stuff. And inside of there is some special essence that you've created that's maybe sometimes hard to really define or understand without like letting it live for a while. So that's the kind of thing that I really am excited, because I think there's such a beautiful essence in your music. It's very personal, but it goes beyond being personal. I want to play your music. That blues, I'm going to ask you if I can play that in some gigs, seriously, and I think a lot of other people, we're all going to do covers of your music and
Good royalties.
So that's one thing I think that was just striking to me, that you have a gift as a composer and a performer, and I think these things over time, I'm so excited to see how they develop and come together. So thank you so much. It's been such a journey. I'm so excited and happy for you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Aditi. I have a lot of notes here, so I put numbers. So I'm going to be number one. I want to start acknowledging the fact, like it's been said, you are an alumni of the program from before they graduate, so it's always very emotional when you spend 2-3 years with a student, and to see that, where you start and when you're ending is it's for me and for everybody that knows you is extremely emotional. Number one, I would like to also acknowledge your parents that came from India, and a big clap for that because you're in the room supporting your daughter. I think this is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Number two, your project is personal to you, but it's personal for many of us that didn't grow up in a jazz tradition, right? And so I think it's beautiful that you kind of put yourself in this process of talking about your own journey, because it's something that everybody that come from a different kind, everybody that is an immigrant, musician immigrant in this country, in jazz, has to come to their own terms of how you make that work, and it's, at the end, whatever comes out is who you happen to be as an artist. So I appreciate that you brought this narrative and you made it so beautifully clear to everybody. Third, what is easily missed in your beautiful music is what a great lyricist you are. And I want to just say that even before I talk about your music, I feel like your power as a storytelling artist is in your music as well, in your lyrics, and those things are not always easy to combine. And I think you have a beautiful gift for that. In terms of your music, I totally agree with all the comments. The way I wrote it is, to me, every song feels almost like watching a movie, and there's grace, vulnerability, and a longing that I really resonate with me. And so it's very, very beautiful. And I love what you said, Alan, about this beauty that it just sees. It's not forced. And I completely agree with that. Okay, now, having said all of this is my question. I have one general question where I know for the limitation of the 20 minutes, you cannot talk specifically about a lot of as a composer, analysis and things. So I want to give you a little bit space for that. But I would like to start with this question that you talk in your last song, Ohms, you talk about rag, right? So in jazz education, conventional jazz education, we talk about modes and scales, right? And then in our global, you're exposed very, very specifically to another point of view, which are, the old tetrachord, wonderful theory that Danilo talks about. And from what I understand from rag is, in Sanskrit, rag means something that color your mind. I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong. But in Indian classical music, is a system that is, is used to create a very special emotion in one mind. So where you are at now after this journey, trying to connect all the dots between your culture and, jazz culture, tetrachords, modes, and we never speak about rag. Can you speak a little bit more about rag, more specifically to what I said, and how that is part of your music? And then if you want to expand on any of the analysis of your piece, please do.
Okay, thank you for your question, Marco. I think, so rags, I guess the main difference between a mode and rag, which I'm sure you are aware of, is that like rags are also sung at different times of the day. They're very specific. There's a specific emotion attached to each rag. Like a ras, the rasas are like they're present in rags. For me, growing up though, I would say it was more something that my mother put me into my Hindustani classical training, and like my sister and I, we would have our lessons. I don't think I thought about it too much at that time or really investigated into the research. So that's still something that I'm doing. But with Rag Bhairav that I used here, it was a rag that I really loved and my grandparents loved too. We would sing the bandish or the, or the little, how do I describe a bandish? It's the part with lyrics, but it's only like 4 lines in the rag. And I think the important thing to acknowledge is how the embellishments for each of the notes are very different. So it's not just a collection of pitches, but and we don't have microtones in Indian music like intentionally, but I think that's something that people touch as they embellish these notes. So being in global has been really cool, talking about tetrachords, because I've been able to relate it a little bit. It's been a easier way for me to understand harmony, as I can like hear the color changes. And the rag study is something that I will continue. I actually did take a few lessons with a Indian classical teacher when I went home over the winter break. So that's something that I want to keep going back to. But right now, I'm literally just thinking about my personal experiences and, how I would sing this rag, how my grandparents would sing this rag, how we would, and how I could just try to experiment with different harmonies from it. And I can show a little bit of the analysis for that piece, actually. So here we have some of the chords that are mostly derived from that set of pitches. However, it changes a little bit. But there are only 1 or 2 sections where it changes. And in the B section, actually, I don't know if you can read from here. It says D major pentatonic with sharp 2. I think if you take the Rag Bhairav, which is da, 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 and you start it from the third or the D, you can get like a D major. It's like I wanted to explore that pentatonic sound, and that's where I got this bass line from. Da, da, do, da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. So that's what I was trying to explore in this section. And the other section where Ria, the guitarist, and I were improvising, we were improvising over B-flat Bhairav, but the bass line implies like a G-flat tonality. So that was also interesting for me to try singing some of the melodies that I was familiar with in that rag, but over that bass line, just as like a practice myself while I was writing this piece. So, yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations, Aditi. Congratulations. I want to, confirm some of the comments that have been made, and I want to tell you that the blues part really grabbed a unique space in my heart because of the emotional content you were able to achieve, even if we were exposed to new sounds, and those are very critical things when you're experimenting, to really encourage you to bring these sounds to your people, to your culture, and expose it to them and see how they react and monitor the connections of this experiment. They're so experimental in a way, and it touches me in a way because I believe that the blues is innovation, and you're tapping into a rag that is a set of a specific pitch, and you are connecting with the blues in a very unique way. And there is so much potential in that, and I want to encourage you to continue a journey because there is uniqueness there, originality, singularity. The instrumentation, very unique too, and the sound, the acoustic, you were able to accomplish a lot with the acoustic instrument. And I also would encourage you to make a set list of parameters sound-wise that you have for every piece, like an etude. We talk about this. So in every piece you said, I'm coming from this place, these sounds, I'm trying to do this, and send the musicians this material so they can get familiar with a language and see how that affect their playing. It would be great to turn every piece of this into an etude. You have a film scoring innate talent to it since the first time I heard some of the music. So I will encourage you. I would love to see some of this music with and interconnected to other disciplines. You have that. The music has that sense like you're floating and you see images, and it's nice to not have anything in front of you, but it's also would be great to see what kind of power will come if you do a multidisciplinary experience, 3-dimensional stuff. You talk about you want to empower younger musicians. Can you talk on the ways that you are planning to do that?
So I think I've been trying to. I was teaching last year in India at a school, and it was like a Western contemporary music program, but I felt a kind of distance that people, a distance there, like with the students. There was obviously a physical distance from this culture, from the West, but also familiarity because the West is popular culture, but also. They weren't really acknowledging their own musical background in a way that they could have been, and they should, because it's so rich. It's a diverse country, and I just think that people could benefit a lot by relating some of their own personal experiences, their musical influences, to more like Western popular music and jazz and these other traditions. I would like to in the future at least design like a curriculum or like workshops that I could carry out in schools in India to implement this and to just to share my own personal experience. And we were talking with Alan that hopefully if I share something personal, it can inspire people to like relate to what I'm saying and inspire them to like continue on their own path in some ways. But obviously there are more concrete ways of doing these things too, and I have employed some of those ways. So I think there could be like more interesting improvisational workshops. I'm actually in touch with some musicians in India who are carrying some of these things out, doing things like that. I had a conversation with one of them. So that's something that I want to pursue. And simultaneously, I think it would be beneficial, and from what I've heard over here from peers and mentors, to also do something similar with students here who may not be familiar with the culture, and kind of like what you were saying, like design etudes to help them think about and connect with this music. I still have to think about that though, so that's interesting, like how to make it like, you know, but I think it is a language, it's its own language, and I'm also in the process of remembering some of it. So
Great. Yeah. And before the last, I want to congratulate you because you have been able to present something very personal. And throughout all the years that I've worked with you, you always were in an input mode. You were not in an output mode. You were just give me. And it's amazing to be with a student that is thirsty for knowledge in this time, the 21st century. And so congratulations, keep that open-minded, keep that humility you have, keep that desire and seeking the quest for wisdom in your life. That's you just show us that successful fusion of often involve deep collaboration, mutual respect, and a willingness to explore and learn from both musical worlds. Thank you very much.
Please give another round of applause for Aditi. Congratulations.